Welcome back to The Explainer. Normally I'm right here with a ton of bright energy to break down some really complex topics for us. But tonight, tonight is gonna be a little different. We're gonna abandon the bright lights and that upbeat tempo for a bit. Instead, I want you to imagine we're all just sitting around a dying campfire, with the shadows flickering just barely out of reach. Because in this Explainer, we're diving into a story that captures what is absolutely the ultimate urban nightmare. The pure, unfiltered terror of being trapped totally alone on late-night transit. It's called The Midnight Carriage to Nowhere. So get comfortable, lower the volume of the outside world, and let's step into the darkness together. Our story starts with this very specific, very isolating timestamp, 11:47 p.m. The protagonist has worked late, they've missed their usual train home. This right here, this is the absolute last train of the night. I want you to really picture the scene for a second, an almost completely empty station. There are just a few exhausted passengers waiting silently under those harsh, flickering fluorescent lights we've all seen. Outside, a heavy rain is just pouring down, and this bitter, freezing wind echoes right through the concrete platform. You can literally feel the chill, right? It's that absolute, striking vulnerability of being completely alone in a vast public space, just waiting for that one final ride to salvation. So the train finally pulls in, but immediately, something feels deeply, deeply wrong. First, the doors open with this loud, agonizing metallic screech. It's this incredibly harsh, violent sound that completely breaks the quiet of the station. But the really unsettling part, almost nobody gets off. Our narrator steps up to the middle carriage and peers inside. The entire train looks empty. Actually, scratch that. It looks too empty. It's like an unnatural void. But they're exhausted, they're totally out of options, so they step inside anyway, picking a seat in this seemingly abandoned middle carriage. Almost instantly, the environment itself starts to break down. The lights up above don't just hum, they flicker with this sickly, constant rhythm. On, off, on, off. It's almost like a pulse, a visual heartbeat of this rising, inescapable unease. Every single time the carriage plunges into that split second of darkness, you're left holding your breath, wondering if the light will ever actually come back on. The train lurches forward and starts to move. And at first, despite the flickering, everything seems somewhat normal. But trust me, that fragile sense of safety is about to completely shatter. Into the darkness. The familiar urban decay vanishes entirely, and we step straight into the impossible. Because somehow, in between those flickering intervals of light, a completely still old woman in dark clothing suddenly appears. And here's the thing, she absolutely was not there when they boarded. The narrator tries to look away, just desperately trying to ignore this impossible passenger. But as they look out the glass, a whole new layer of dread just washes over them. Normally, on a late-night commute, you expect to see things, right? The blur of city lights, passing stations, the basic architecture of the real world. But outside this window, it is complete and utter darkness. The train has completely stopped moving. There is absolutely nothing out there. We're talking about a void so absolute you can't even tell what's real anymore. It's not just dark, it's like an absence of reality itself. Zero signal. Panic is really starting to set in now. So what's the very first thing any of us do when we feel threatened or lost nowadays? We reach for our lifelines. The narrator pulls out their phone. Zero signal. No bars, no emergency calls, just nothing. This sudden, terrifying realization hits them like a truck. They are entirely cut off from the outside world. They're sealed inside this metal tube, floating in an endless black void, sitting across from a woman who literally should not be there. You shouldn't have boarded this train. And then, the heavy silence of that dead, stopped train is broken. Without lifting her head, without moving a single muscle, the old woman finally speaks. Her voice is this dry, ominous whisper that just cuts right through the dead air. Let that chill linger for a second. It's the ultimate confirmation that this isn't some weird mechanical failure. No, this is a trap. The silent passengers. The survival instinct kicks in hard right here. Adrenaline just floods the narrator's body. They immediately sprint toward the heavy sliding door of the next car, desperate to escape. But the very second they cross the threshold, they freeze. The terror just stacks, layer by suffocating layer. The carriage isn't empty. Every single seat is filled with people, but they are completely silent. Not a cough, not a whisper, not even the rustle of a jacket. They are sitting perfectly still. They aren't blinking. and every single one of them is staring directly at our narrator. I mean, just imagine the sheer psychological horror of that exact moment. Dozens of unblinking eyes locked right onto you, perfectly synchronized in this terrifying, motionless observation. Breathing heavily, their heart just pounding against their ribs, the narrator backs away slowly. They retreat right back into the previous carriage, just praying for that empty space they just left. But the physical laws of reality, yeah, they have completely abandoned them now. When they turn back around to the carriage they just fled from, the old woman is no longer sitting. She is standing at the exact other end of the train, and she is closer than before. It's a spatial jump that is literally impossible. It makes zero logical sense, and it is the catalyst for absolute, unadulterated panic. The endless loop. At this point, reason is just gone. There is only flight. Our narrator turns and starts sprinting, running like their life depends on it, slamming through those heavy doors, crossing the noisy metal coupling between the cars, rushing headfirst into the next carriage, and then the next, and the next. But it becomes this inescapable nightmare loop. They run into the next identical carriage, desperately hoping for a way out, only to see the exact same flickering lights, the exact same silent, unblinking passengers staring right through them. And every single time they look back over their shoulder, the old woman is there, getting closer. Carriage after carriage after carriage. It is a terrifying treadmill where every single desperate attempt to flee only loops them right back to the exact same horrifying reality. There is literally no end to the strain. The final stop. The running abruptly stops, not by choice, mind you. The relentless pounding of their footsteps is cut completely short because the train speaker above them suddenly crackles to life. It's this incredibly loud, sharp burst of static that completely shatters the silence and the panic. Final stop. Through that harsh static, a disembodied, almost mechanical whisper echoes down from the speaker. The words just hang in the air with this eerie, devastating finality. And immediately following that chilling announcement, the train comes to a violent, jarring halt. All the momentum just completely dies. The doors slowly slide open with that exact same metallic screech from the very beginning. Our narrator looks outside, desperately hoping for anything even remotely familiar. But instead, they see an empty platform, totally choked in a thick, swirling fog. There is no station name on the walls. There are no overhead lights anywhere. There is absolutely nothing. It is this grim, bleak picture of an unknown void. Just complete darkness and a cold, damp mist waiting right outside the open doors. The environment has changed, and so do the entities trapped within it. Those silent passengers, the ones who haven't moved a single muscle this entire time, suddenly react. At the exact same time, they all stand up. They slowly pivot toward the open doors in perfect unison. And then, methodically, almost robotically, one by one, they march right out of the train and disappear into the thick fog. They don't speak a word. They don't look back once. They just march straight into the abyss. As the very last of the passengers file out, our narrator is left completely alone again. Well, almost alone. For the very first time since this nightmare started, the old woman lifts her head from beneath her long gray hair. She looks directly at the narrator. Her eyes are completely black. We're talking solid, pitch-black voids. And as she stares right into their terrified soul, she smiles. A slow, incredibly sinister smile that promises absolutely nothing but suffering. "You stay here now." She leans in slightly and whispers that final command. It completely seals the protagonist's fate. It is a sharp, terrifying decree. It's absolutely not a request. It's the final judgment of whatever horrifying nightmare realm this train has brought them to. The trap has officially been sprung. And if you thought that was the end, oh no. As soon as the old woman speaks those words, out there on the dark, fog-covered platform, all those silent passengers immediately stop walking. And together, in perfect, terrifying synchronization, they slowly turn back around, and they face the trapped narrator right there in the carriage. The doors remain open, and the darkness is just waiting. This story drops you right into a space where the fundamental rules of reality no longer apply, and your only escape routes just lead you deeper into the trap. So before we put the fire out on tonight's explainer, I have to ask you, if you stepped onto that middle carriage, if you saw those dozens of unblinking eyes, and if those doors opened up into that fog, what would you do to survive this train? Just think about that for a second. Maybe the next time you find yourself waiting alone on a cold platform at midnight. Until next time, stay safe and be very, very careful which train you board.